Welcome in, everybody, to a Thursday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports as we cruise through another week, get closer to the NFL draft. Just 2 weeks from today, everybody, the NFL draft will kick off. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Thursday morning, brother?
Getting closer, yeah, 2 weeks away, exactly. So Thursday night, might have some action, might not have some action. Who knows if they trade out? So, but NFL draft is always fun, even though I kind of ripped it yesterday. But doesn't mean you're not going to find good players. Just not enamored at the top. But the good news, the silver lining, the Eagles are good, so they're not drafting at the top. So you don't feel bad. If you had
to put an over-under on, will this team make a selection on Thursday night in 2 weeks, John? What are you saying, yes or no?
I'm slightly under, but probably 51-49. I think they prefer to trade out. I think you see them. Some of the strategy is they're looking at a lot of what I call bridge picks who might go late first, early second. So if you can if you could bail out and do some things and then maybe come up and do some things in the second round and turn some of those fifth round picks into a more meaningful premium pick, get a couple second rounders, that type of thing. I think that's the preferable way, but you always need two to tango. I think it's looking more and more likely that there will be, even though there shouldn't be, there probably will be a desperate quarterback team that will want to come back up into the first round, late first round, to get one of those quarterbacks. But you always need two to tango, and I think that's the preferable way. But you have to be prepared that if you have to pick at 32, you got to pick at 32.
Right.
Maybe you make a targeted trade up even. So what we do know is how he's going to move around the board.
Right.
So, and that's more than the first round, all over. And so he'll be making moves. There's no question about that. But I think the more likely scenario remains dropping down. But again, we're not talking about 90. They're definitely going to drop down. And people always forget the second part of the equation. You got to have somebody to trade with. So that factors into it.
Yeah, it does. Howie's been pretty good at finding that person, so hopefully he does it again. I think he will. But no doubt about it. We'll see what they end up doing there. Johnny Mac, more top 30 visits coming down. What are we up to, 20 or 21 now after the USC cornerback, defensive back Jalen Smith? Now, this is a guy who's going to go potentially way later in the draft. I believe he's in ranked around 200 or 212 by Pro Football Focus. So he's a later pick, but another cornerback, and that puts us up to, I want to say, 20 or 21 prospects track.
I believe it's 21 at this point.
Yeah, because we got the Penn State guy at the end of the show yesterday.
Yeah, Jalen Reed, safety from Penn State, sort of a hybrid guy. The Georgia kid, the defensive end. Well, actually, could be an end, could be a tackle. There's some versatility there. Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, so that was reported. So I believe we're at 21, and a lot of defensive front people, followed by offensive line, followed by defensive back.
Yep.
Particularly corner, which it doesn't make a lot of sense unless you start talking about the layered part of it and the depth part of it. And Vic Fangio mentioned the depth and losing bodies, not only Slay, who's a starter, but Isaiah Rodgers and Avonte Maddox.
Right.
And the one thing about Jalen Smith is versatility. He's played nickel, he's played outside, he's played safety. So, sounds a lot like Avonte Maddox.
Right.
You get potential fifth round pick. You got 4 of them. That would be, I would think, the spot for him. Reed, obviously they're going to bring in competition for Sidney Brown. Justin Simmons is obviously hoping that's him. They might do it in the draft. And we'll see how that shakes out. But ultimately, there's going to be somebody brought in at safety. And, do you want an unproven young player battling with a rookie? Not in love with that thought process, but hey, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean were pretty good rookies last year. So
Yeah.
never say never.
No doubt about it. Good stuff there. Johnny Mac, the other trend I'm picking up here on these top 30 visits is if you look closely, well, one, it's clear that they're going to draft they're going to draft a secondary guy somewhere. And while I did question that at first with, you spent your top 2 picks last year on 2 corners, like you just laid out. You lost Slay, you lost Rodgers, you lost Maddox, and you lost Gardner Johnson. So there is 4 bodies gone in the secondary. They got to recoup that somehow. They signed Adoree Jackson, and then they'll go hard in the draft. But the other thing I'm noticing, John, is trade up seems unlikely based on these top 30 visits. I mean, they're not looking at anybody that's the highest graded guy I think that they've had visit was probably Donovan Izaraku from Boston College.
Yeah, I agree with that. But there's a lot of players. TJ Sanders, I would put in this list. There's a lot of players that I mentioned yesterday. 20 to 40 is not much difference.
Right.
So, if you're a team that likes TJ Sanders in the early 20s, he might go there. If teams who need a defensive tackle say, I like somebody else, he might go in the second round. And I think you have a lot of those types of prospects. I even as a Rockies that way. I could see him go in top 20, and I could see him fall into the top of the second round.
I'm with you. Yeah.
So it's about what flavor do you like? Nick Scorton as well is in that category.
Right. And there's a lot of guys. So doesn't that kind of tell you maybe that's how the Eagles are viewing it, similar to how you just did? 20 to 40 is kind of our range. But if we got to go back and we can get one of these guys, we're good with doing that.
Exactly. And that's kind of where I think they are. And that's what their thought process is. Donovan Jackson on the offensive line as well. Josh Connerly. All these guys could be first round picks. They could also be second round picks.
Right.
And that's sort of where you are with this draft. It's very hard to pin down in the first round because there's not a lot. There's usually more of a drop off, I would say. There's not a ton of blue chippers. If you ask me, there's 2. That's it.
Right.
And then you go down to maybe 12 or 13, and you get another drop. And from that drop to, so say 15, I said 20 to 40. I'm going to go 15 to 40. Kind of like, all right, what do you need? What's your favorite flavor? What player do you like? What player has the intangibles, the character for your organization, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
There's, and that's why I think for everybody, it's more about going down than going up. But if everybody wants to go down,
right, it's going to be harder to do so.
Exactly.
Now, the Eagles do have that one advantage of being 32. So if the quarterback falls and somebody likes them, now here's my concern with that. I think if Shedeur does fall, I don't think he's going to fall to 32. So then you're talking about, is somebody want Jalen Milroe or Jackson Dart or Tyler Show at 32? That's a little bit more of an uphill bat. I don't know if a team will be ready to commit on one of those guys at 32. But you know how it works, John. There's a lot of quarterback needy teams in the NFL, and maybe they would be willing to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Pittsburgh has already talked themselves into Jackson Dart. So, I think he's going to be a first round pick.
Milroe too.
Well, yeah, they got to like everybody. It's like, I see all this hype about that. I see all this hype about Justin Fields with the Jets, and he talked yesterday. And, you could sense the legitimate optimism. That's what happens in the offseason. But they got to be. What else is there? That's their guy. For Pittsburgh, Pat McAfee had that goofy thing, and there was a rumor going on. Aaron Rodgers is going to announce he's going to sign with Pittsburgh. No. I think he's waiting on Minnesota, and if that, he might retire, or he might come back to the Steelers at that point. But, he could come in August and pick everything up and run an NFL offense. So it's not a concern about him being anywhere in the offseason. But, Pittsburgh's got to draft a quarterback whether they have him or not. And, to me, the best case scenario for the Eagles is Sanders to fall to Pittsburgh. He's not falling out. He's not falling out of the first round. He's not falling to 32.
Right.
But if he falls out, if he falls all the way to Pittsburgh, then all of a sudden you have Jackson Dart and Jalen Miller and Tyler Show, who people like him in the NFL way more than the draft people. I'm telling you. That guy.
Who, Milrow?
No, the kid from Louisville.
Oh, Tyler Show.
I'm not saying he's going in the first round, but if like New Orleans takes Sanders and everything gets bumped up,
right?
Don't be surprised if he goes in the first round. Like they like him way more than I've seen draft people. Like PFF has him at 186. I guarantee he's going in the second round. So there's a bunch of guys that people are talking themselves into, as they always do, because they're so desperate. I'm not saying they belong there, because I don't think they do. But there will be a team that wants to trade up, and it might not be 32, it might be 31, it might be 30, to get one of those guys. Yeah, I mean, it's just, that's the league. And when you don't have a quarterback, you talk yourself into shit. That's why I bring up Justin Fields. The Jets are talking themselves into it.
Yeah, which is not the right guy to talk yourself into.
Desperate people do desperate things.
Of those three, Johnny Mac, who do you think who do you like the best? Is it Tyler Show? Is that I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Thank Jimmy.
I don't know.
He says Tyler Show is pronounced Shuck for some reason.
Tyler Shuck. All right.
I don't know if that's right. Jim, I appreciate your $5, but I am gonna fact check you on this and say, but I'm just saying Show because I'm sounding it out like grade school.
Yeah, I'm with you. That was one of the hardest things for me around the draft because I butcher a bunch of people's names. I don't want to. I should do the research to figure out what their names. But hey, look, I got too much work to do with the Eagles. I'm like,
a lot of names. Yeah.
When I get drafted by the Eagles, it's the first thing I do. If it's somebody I'm questioning about. And one of my greatest accomplishments was Salapuli Bati Bata. I still talk about it.
You got that down on lock.
And
still,
I think to this day, I think I'm the only one who pronounces Noah Tungiai's name correctly. And it's Tungiai. So yeah, but anyway, first tangent of the day.
There you go. Jim, if Tyler Show or Shuck ends up in Philly, John will get you the right pronunciation.
Yeah. But Milrow clearly has the highest ceiling. I mean, he's the most physically gifted, probably in the entire class, to be honest. He's more gifted than Ward. Obviously, he's from an
athleticism standpoint, I would agree with that.
Yeah. It's not even close from an athleticism standpoint.
Yeah. You mean bigger arm and stuff too, but
he's got a bigger arm. He's got everything. He's a 4-4. He can run. He can do it, but he's incredibly raw and undeveloped and inconsistent. And the best, the two things you have to be an NFL quarterback are accurate and processing. Those are the two top things. And he's not there with either. But ceiling wise,
him though, like Jalen Hurts or like a combo of Jalen and Lamar. I'm not saying he's those players. I'm saying Lamar's got that super athleticism, and Jalen started his NFL career kind of a little bit more undeveloped, or at least he was thought to be. I wonder if teams are viewing him like that, or Jalen helped his draft profile.
It's possible, but he's by far the most physically gifted of the group, and that's the entire group. And then, Dart to me is going to be a first round pick, and Tyler Shuck, if we're going with that, is going to be way higher than people think. I think he's clearly the next guy in the NFL's mind. So if you say Ward, Sanders, Dart, Milrow, Shuck is clearly the next guy ahead of whatever you want it. If you like Will Howard or Kyle McCord or Quinn Ewers, Dylan. You know who's the best quarterback in this class? It's just the best quarterback. Dylan Gabriel.
Yeah, I like Dylan Gabriel. He played well.
But he's so small. So, he's not an NFL player from a physical standpoint. But as far as processing, he's way ahead of everybody else. Way ahead of. And he could be a backup for a long time, I think. And then I started my Eagles positional previews at SI, and obviously the Eagles aren't taking a quarterback in the draft, but the Bowling Green kid is coming out. To me, that's obvious. That's where you go as an undrafted kid.
Right.
You need a camp on. With Scott Lepler coming in.
Exactly. The quarterback's coach is familiar with his game.
Yeah, exactly. So that would be my bet as far as, because you want that fourth arm. Last year it was Will Greer, if you remember, who had the history with Kellen Moore, Doug Nussmeier, not a coincidence. And Connor Bazelak is his name, 2-year starter at Bowling Green. You're looking for the undrafted kid to come in. That would be my bet.
Yeah, we'll see what ends up happening there. By the way, I did do a little fact checking on the fly. Thank Jinwoo. Well done. All right, it is Tyler Shuck, and he tweeted that Tyler Shuck from his own account back in 2017. I guess somebody was asking him how the hell do you pronounce it way back then. He said it is pronounced Shuck. So I did do some research on that. Good stuff there. Tyler Shuck.
All right. Yeah. All right. We got one down.
But there you go. There's one of the names. So thank Jimu. Thanks for the super chat, brother. Good stuff there. Another top 30 visits. That's 21 names down, everybody. So we're moving right along in terms of who these guys are. If you want me to rattle them off, we got, what do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4 offensive tackles. We have 5 offensive tackles. We got 2 guards. You got 4 cornerbacks. You got a bunch of defensive tackles as well. So a whole litany, but it clearly shows you which way they're looking. I mean, they got edge, defensive tackle, offensive line, and cornerback. And then a safety and a running back are one-offs. So you can clearly see where they're looking to go in this draft, or at least the style of, or at least what player they're looking for, what position they're looking for in this draft. John, I'm going to ask you this, all right, after the losses here on defense and moving forward. Before I do that, I want to thank everybody for being here this morning. As always, appreciate all of you guys, as always, for being here. Hit that like button. Already got a good crowd in here on a Thursday morning. 2 weeks, exactly 2 weeks from the NFL draft. We'll be streaming it. I mean, we might not even have a pick in the first round, but we will see what happens. John, I want to ask you, what's the floor on this defense in your eyes right now? I know it's an unfinished product. I think we're going to get players in the draft. I think this answer will change, and you reserve the right to change the answer. But as it stands right now, just based on the losses, what type of floor do you think this defense moved to?
Probably 20-ish.
Whoa. That's low.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of volatility in NFL defenses anyway. And I've mentioned, even if they were able to bring back this group unaffected, I would have bet against them being number 1 again. Just, it's like baseball relievers. There's this great swing from year to year, and everything clicked last year. and it was a historic year. So very much like anytime you have that, you're going to regress to the mean a little bit. So even if you had all these players back, Milton and Josh and CJ and on and on and on, and N'Kobe never got hurt, you can and you find a way to bring Slay back, all of it.
Right.
I don't think they would have been number one again. It's just hard to do. But they would have been very good, obviously. But they lost significant talent. And again, that's the floor. You know, if things go bad, you have more injuries than you had last year, which I think that's a pretty high floor, to be honest, because, you know, if things go bad, but, you know, you saw things go bad. You don't have to go back very far.
Right.
By the end of the 23 season, they arguably had the worst defense in football. Didn't finish whatever 30th. But they were playing like the worst defense in football at the end of the season. And you know, Vic will prevent that kind of catastrophe. But if you don't have the players, there's only, you know, he's not magic. People say the same thing about Stoutland, you know, and they conveniently forget the guys. Well, he'll figure it out. You know, Kenyon Green, he'll figure it out. Well, I mean, no, he didn't figure out Andre Dillard.
Right.
And you see the drop off from Mekhi Becton to Tyler Steen, and, you know, obviously Jordan Mailata to Fred Johnson, but he gets those guys playing at a higher level. Same with Vic. But yeah, I mean, look, I've said it pretty consistently, and it's not over. And that's why I hate to make these declarative statements, because I don't believe there is 1% of a chance that the Eagles enter next season with the 4-man edge rushing group that everybody is projecting right now. I don't believe it. I refuse to believe it. I don't think Howie Roseman will do that. They're going to get some kind of defensive tackle help. They're going to bring in a safety. They're going to add to the depth in the secondary. It's going to improve a lot, you know, starting in 2 weeks with the draft and potential additions down the road, whether it's Justin Simmons or somebody else. But the group right now, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of holes right now. Luckily, they don't have to play tomorrow.
Last year, I dubbed it the no holes defense. I can't dub it that. I can't dub it that yet this year, but we will see what Vic can do. I will say this though, you know, in 23, from 23 to 24, your defensive personnel, I guess it changed a lot. I mean, it changed enough for Vic to make a dramatic jump. Obviously, you added Quinyon and Cooper and two of those guys, and Jalix Hunt even contributed late in the year. But, you know, it feels like Vic pulled a lot out of that defense last year as compared to 23, which obviously he did. But my floor is a little higher than you at 20 because of Vic. I know I'm not disagreeing that you got to have the players, but this team's been pretty good at player evaluation. Not perfect, but they've been pretty good, and they brought in a lot of darts. So I'm thinking Vic is going to get at least extract value out of some of them. Probably not Zach Bond. I'm not going that far, but, you know, Azeez Ojulari, a guy that has potential, a guy that has skills. What can Vic pull out of him? You know, guys like that. I think Vic is going to pull some stuff out of those guys, and the defense will be all right.
I don't think this Steve. Again, we're talking about there's a different. If you're assuming, I just said they're going to add an edge rusher, maybe two. They're going to add a
probably a better combo for training camp, but you know, we're having it now too.
Yeah, they're going to add a safety. It might be Justin Simmons. Then it changes everything. But I'm saying right now, that was the question. That's the question I'm answering. Right now, there's a whole lot of freaking holes. And that's why Howie Roseman said, you got to be patient. You got to be patient. And if the Eagles, you know, I'm sorry, but if the Eagles have their druthers, you know, all these lottery, you know, whatever you want to call them, Temu signings, they're not even going to play that much.
Yeah.
And that's every single one of them, with the exception of our guy, Harrison Bryant, who, well, yeah, because I don't know what he's doing. But the goal is to, the goal is to get other players on the field. And some of them aren't even here yet, because if they draft TJ Sanders,
Right.
if they draft Nick Gordon, well, knock one of them off.
Right. Yep, we'll see what they end up doing there. Johnny Mac, going to get to these 2 super chats. We'll get to our first commercial break. We're going to talk to Devin Jackson in hour number 2. You guys remember Devin Jackson from the Philadelphia Inquirer. We had him on a few weeks ago, had him on a bunch last year as well, leading up to the draft. One of the best draft guys in the business. He's really good, and he's locally, obviously, works for the Inquirer. So we're going to get him up in hour number 2. We'll do that. We'll get to these super chats. Devin, Vulnerable Vitality, appreciate you guys. Johnny Mac, are you a Masters guy? All right, the Masters are kicking off today.
I have a Masters hat. I like the I'm not a historian or anything, but yeah, but I like the Masters.
Yeah, I love watching. It's one of my favorite sporting events of the year. You can see I got the Masters green Kango on today, everybody. I'm ready to go for the Masters kicking off today. So one of my favorite sporting events of the year is the Masters. I love just the whole serene nature of it. But that's coming up starting today. So we'll see how that goes. And for anybody in the chat watching the Masters, enjoy it. Twiz says Masters stinks. Come on, Twiz. That's some crazy talk right there. Devin Shanahan checks in, John. He says, J-Mac, where does Ashton Genty fall? It's a good question.
Pretty high, which I don't like. I mean, I don't like taking
I got him going
backs.
to Dallas at 12.
I don't like taking running backs in the top 10, but I think he might go in the top 10. He's one of the best players in the draft. You got a bunch of teams who are bad decision makers. And they won't be ready for a running back, but they'll take a running back. So I think it starts with Las Vegas potentially. They might take him. Then you have the Bears at 10. I think that's his floor. I think they'll take him. And you mentioned Dallas. I think Dallas would love to take him. But I don't think he gets by Chicago, worst case scenario. He's one of the best players in the draft. You could argue he's the 3rd best player in the draft. But I don't like taking running backs that high. But it's not a good draft at the top.
Yeah, it just rarely works out. Like even a guy that has now cemented himself in Philadelphia Eagles history and NFL history with what he did last year in Saquon Barkley, it didn't work. Taking him that high didn't work. That's why, like, however good Ashton Genty is, I'm not a fan of him going that high. But we'll see what ends up happening with him. I like him going to Dallas. I don't think that'd be a good pick for them, but it's something I could see the Cowboys doing. So we will see what happens.
A lot of teams that will make that decision. So I think it's good for Ashton as well. I don't think he's going to last long. I think he's going to be a top 10 pick.
All right, here we go. Vulnerable Vitality checks in with another super chat. What's up, brother? Connor Mizzou legend Basilak getting a mention on Birds 365 was not on my bingo card. We were one of his 3-4 schools. LOL. I love it, man.
Yeah, he played forever. That's part of, the Eagles don't like older prospects, but we're talking about undrafted kid. He's almost 25. To me, it makes too much sense. It's not going to play. They're locked in with Jalen and Tanner McKee and Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Not going to be on the 53. So you're only talking about a camp arm and a practice squad guy. And, he's got a history and a pretty successful one at Bowling Green, which was his last college, with Scott Lepter, who's the Eagles' new quarterbacks coach. You're going to have an in with him. Now, there's always the potential that Scott Lepler secretly dislikes him because he was around him. But they had a lot of success for Bowling Green.
Right.
I don't see why he wouldn't like him. To me, it makes too much sense.
It's good stuff there. Daz brings up a good point going back to the running back. He says, I don't know, Gibbs, Bijan, and Zeke were all worth it in my opinion, but Daz, I do think those are entirely different situations. And I can also push back on Bijan. I mean, was Bijan really what the Falcons needed? I mean, what have they won? What have they done since he's been there? I know he's a great player.
He's a great player. That's the point.
Right.
He's a great player. You could
I'm not
argue
saying he's not a great player. Yeah, he is an excellent player. But with Zeke and with Gibbs, I mean, look at what Gibbs went through, Daz. He's got weapons all around him. That's why he's able to flourish so well, I think.
Yeah, Detroit's ready to win.
Yeah.
And you see the impact of a running back like Gibbs. And Bijan, you could make a strong argument that Bijan's the best running back in football. He's on a team that's not ready. He's Saquon.
Right.
He's Saquon on the Giants. A little bit. I mean, the Falcons are a little bit better than the Giants. I'm not going to disparage them to that.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, and he's a great, nobody's disparaging, and Zeke as well. They're all good players. I don't, unless you're ready to win, I'm not taking a running back because there's too many other positions that are more important. And you just saw the best running back season, arguably, in NFL history. I mean, if you want to take it to include the postseason, nobody's ever had more rushing yards in a season than Saquon Barkley. I still believe the offensive line is the more important part of that equation. I think Saquon would tell you that. Well, I mean, you know how players are. Saquon will tell you the same thing, but then the offensive line will tell you, no, it's Saquon. So they prop each other up, as well they should. But like, we have a long history of Saquon with a bad football team. Same player, arguably even better, more dynamic.
Right.
Because he was younger, didn't have some of the injuries that piled up. And you saw the result over a long period of time.
Yeah, drastically different results, no doubt.
So if you're ready, go get the running back.
People are not happy you just called Bijan Robinson the best running back in football.
Well, because they don't understand what I'm saying. They're focused on, they love their guy. I'm not saying he had the best season.
Yes, I know what you're saying. Yeah,
I'm saying he's a very, very good player that you don't know because he's not on a very good team. Well, you don't know, obviously, how good he is. We've been through this. It could be
well, 2 years ago, if, all these people would have said Barkley's not the best running back in football.
Exactly.
So
I don't know why it's so hard for people. I say it all the time with Matthew Stafford at quarterback. He was a better player in Detroit than he was in Los Angeles. I mean, it's not really that big of a controversial statement. You need other players. Bijan Robinson is very good. Very, very, very good.
He's a top 5 talent at the position, no doubt.
Oh,
that'll give you. I'm not going to give you best running back in football.
You should look at his season last year. Yeah.
What about Gibbs? I thought you had Gibbs way up there too.
Well, Gibbs is phenomenal. I'm saying I believe I said he's in the conversation.
Yeah, that's what you always say. You never pick up best overall. No. You always say in the combo.
Yeah. He's a much better receiver than a certain someone we shall not name. He ran for over 1,400 yards on that shit ball of a team, 14 touchdowns, 61 receptions. Guy can fucking play. Could you imagine him on this team? Behind Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata and Cam Jurgens and Landon Dickerson and Mekhi Becton? What do you think 1,450 and that garbage, what do you think that turns into? Probably not going to turn into 2,500. Again, people think I'm disparaging Saquon. I'm saying it might be 2,000 counting the playoffs with about 70 receptions because he can fucking run routes and catch the football.
No, those are pretty good numbers, man, for the Falcons. I mean, come on, everybody. 1,400 yards and 61 receptions. I mean, that's pretty impressive for Bijan Robinson. Look, everybody, it's funny that everybody's turned on him. I mean, we used to be Bijan 365.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
That's
they
what we
love
were
him.
for a
Oh,
little bit.
boy, he would be so good here. So freaking good here. And the Eagles were right. They were thinking about taking him in the first round, but later in the first round. You know, if they were thinking about coming back up to get him if he fell. He never fell. He went like 8th overall.
Yeah.
They're smart enough. They're not going to take him. Not that they could have taken him in 2023 because he went, again, top 10. And they went with the pick before the Eagles traded up to get Jalen Carter. And the Eagles were going to take Jalen Carter. But they wanted to trade back up and get Bijan. But he never fell. So, you know, could you imagine if they got both of those players?
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, he's pretty fucking good. You might want to watch another NFL game occasionally besides your favorite team.
No, he is damn good. There's no doubt about it. I'm not about to shit on him. The guy's super talented, and the Falcons kind of stink. So they're not the Giants, but they're not great at all either. So Johnny Mac, good stuff there. We're gonna get to our first commercial break. When we come back, we're gonna talk about. I got a question for you. All right, a little macro question. I saw this on Twitter last night, and I want to ask you about it. It's a top franchise question. You look at it since 2000. Eagles have got to be up there. So we'll talk about that when we come back. BG made some comments yesterday that made some headlines. We'll talk about that. And then we're going to talk to Devin Jackson coming up at 9:20 on the show. So we'll do all that coming up on Birds 365. Appreciate you all listening.